We sold your car, family comes first. Be thankful we even let you live here. Then he added, and your brother's starting college, so you'll cover his first semester. 5,800, due this week. I said, not happening. He snapped, then pack your stuff, you're dead to me. So I did. That same night, I walked out and left something behind. This morning, they found it, and now my aunt's crying, my uncle's yelling, and my dad's on the porch begging the neighbors for help. This is a story about the breaking point, the moment you realize the people you call family have been systematically exploiting you. What if the very people who were supposed to protect you, the ones who taught you the meaning of family, became the architects of your deepest betrayal? Imagine waking up on your birthday, only to have your entire world, built on years of sacrifice, stolen right out from under you. The air in our house, the one I'd always called home, had grown heavy with a strange tension, a simmering resentment I couldn't quite place. It was my 25th birthday, a day that should have been marked by celebration, but instead, it felt like the prelude to a storm I never saw coming. My name is Charlotte, I'm 25, and I've been grinding since I was 16 years old, working my way through college while still living with my parents. That morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad that stopped my heart. We sold your car. Family comes first. Be grateful we let you live here. The car. My car. The one I'd saved for 3 relentless years to buy with my own money, titled firmly in my name. That one message on my birthday was a gut punch that shattered everything I thought I knew. What I didn't know then was how profoundly this betrayal would reshape my entire life. Our home, the one the Millers called theirs, was less a sanctuary and more a minefield. You learned early to tiptoe around my father, David. He had this grip on everything, our money, our schedules, even our most personal belongings. Being a sales manager at some furniture store just seemed to feed his need to control every single thing at home. And my mom, Susan? She'd just enable it. That's just how your father shows love, she'd say, almost apologetically. Then there was Noah, my 18-year-old brother, the undisputed golden child. He never lifted a finger for a job. Why would he? His room overflowed with the latest gaming consoles, designer sneakers, the newest iPhone, all gifts, because apparently, he needed these things to fit in and succeed. Me? I started slinging hash at Mabel's diner at 16. Weekends turned into nearly full-time hours by senior year. What began as my desperate grab for a sliver of independence quickly morphed into a mandatory family income stream. My dad, David, actually made me pay $400 a month in rent to live in my childhood bedroom while I was going to community college. You need to learn responsibility, he'd lecture, as he pocketed my hard-earned cash. Community college was never my dream, by the way. I'd gotten into the state university with a partial scholarship, but David talked me out of it. Financially irresponsible, he called student loans. You're better off staying home, saving money, and helping the family, he'd insist, while simultaneously pushing Noah towards every prestigious, private university across the country. That car? Saving for it became my obsession for 3 agonizing years. I picked up every extra shift I could, sold clothes online, even donated plasma twice a month. Twice a month. Every single dollar, blood, sweat, and tears, went straight into a savings account I opened the day I turned 18. My dad, David, insisted on being a cosigner, just in case, he'd said. Now I see that was the first cold, calculated step in his takeover of my finances. When I finally scraped together $8,200, I found a reliable used Toyota Corolla. The day I drove it home was one of the proudest moments of my life. David came with me, to make sure you don't get ripped off, but I handled the negotiations. The title was in my name, though he had to keep a family copy of all the paperwork, of course. This pattern, this insidious habit of my parents just claiming my possessions for the family, wasn't new. My high school graduation money from relatives? Magically transformed into a family vacation fund. My first big bonus check from the diner? Conveniently swallowed up by a new water heater. Each time, the message hammered home. My achievements, my possessions, they weren't truly mine. I carried this suffocating mix of guilt for even daring to want independence and burning resentment at being so openly exploited. Mom's constant refrain, family sacrifices for each other. And if I ever dared to question these arrangements, the unspoken accusation was clear. I didn't love them enough. My 25th birthday had begun with a fragile flicker of hope. I'd planned a quiet treat for myself, dinner at my favorite Thai place after my double shift. Chloe, my closest friend at the diner, even promised cupcakes for our break. Small celebrations, yes, but they were mine. I'd even splurged on a clearance rack dress for later. The only family member who ever truly stood in my corner was Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. Unlike David, she championed independence, education. She'd tried to help me financially for university, but David, of course, intercepted her offer, calling it interference. Still, she was my confidant, always sending birthday cards with small cash gifts directly to my workplace, so they couldn't be redistributed by my parents. Uncle Michael, Mom's brother, a successful accountant, had also seen our family dynamics play out for years. He distanced himself after countless arguments with David about money. He maintained a polite relationship, mostly at holidays. Last Christmas, he'd quietly pulled me aside. "Something about your father's financial discussions doesn't add up," he'd whispered, before David abruptly cut off our conversation. "Do you need help setting up independent accounts?" he'd asked. That birthday morning, I'd slipped out early for my 7 a.m. shift, carefully, silently, so as not to wake anyone. Mom had promised a small family dinner that evening, but past birthdays were usually eclipsed by Noah's achievements or David's work stress. Still, I'd held on to a tiny hope this year might be different as I locked the front door and walked to my car. It sat there, parked on the street. The crisp October air bit at my skin as I slid behind the wheel, turning the key in the ignition of the vehicle that was my small, precious piece of independence. I had no idea it would be the last time I would ever drive it. The lunch rush at Mabel's diner finally, mercifully, died down, and I took my break at 2:30. My feet throbbed, a dull ache from 7 hours of nonstop motion, and I still had 5 more to go. Chloe had tried to make it special, though, decorating the tiny break room with a single, sad, happy birthday balloon. She presented me with a chocolate cupcake, a sparkler candle spitting sparks. "Make a wish, birthday girl," she chirped, her blonde ponytail bouncing. I closed my eyes, wishing for the courage to finally move out on my own, then blew out the tiny flame. As Chloe cut the cupcake to share, my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. The text from Dad, David, burned into the screen. "We sold your car this morning. Got $4,000 cash. Family comes first. Be grateful we let you live here." I stared, certain I'd misread it. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "What are you talking about?" "That's my car. I paid for it." His response was instant, chilling. "Your brother got accepted to Preston University. He starts next semester. Tuition deposit was due." My stomach clenched, a cold knot forming, as another text followed. "Oh, and your brother's starting college. You'll cover his first semester. $5,800 due this week." "Dad, that's not possible." I typed, my voice rising enough that Michelle, the shift manager, looked up with concern. "The car is in my name. How could you even sell it?" His cryptic reply came, "We handled the paperwork. Family emergency clause." Then, almost immediately, "Your mother and I have supported you for years. Time to support your brother's future." I called him instantly, stumbling out the diner's back door despite the biting cold. "You can't do this." I choked out, my voice shaking uncontrollably. "That car is legally mine. I worked for it. I paid for it. The title is in my name." "The title had me as co-signer for emergencies, Charlotte," David replied, his voice unnervingly calm. "And this is an emergency. No one needs this money for his education. Your car was just sitting there, depreciating. It made financial sense. You sold my car for $4,000? It's worth at least $7,000. I protested, picturing the blue book value I'd checked just last month. "The buyer was doing us a favor with cash." "No questions asked," he said dismissively. "Besides, you still owe us more for Noah's first semester. Better start picking up extra shifts." "I am not paying for Noah's college." I finally screamed into the phone. I've been saving that money for my own tuition, to finish my degree. David's voice turned to ice. Family comes first, Charlotte. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you kids. Now it's your turn. The call ended abruptly, leaving me gasping, clutching my phone in the frigid alley behind the diner. My car gone. The independence it represented, gone. And now they expected thousands more. I leaned against the brick wall, scenes flashing through my memory. The plasma donation center where the nurses knew me by name. The Saturday double shifts when my friends were off on weekend trips. The coins I'd meticulously collected in a jar labeled Car Fund, counting them obsessively each night. 3 years of sacrifice, vanished in a single morning, without my knowledge, without my consent. When I returned to the break room, Chloe took one look at my face and rushed to my side. What happened? She asked, pushing a glass of water toward me. Through tears, I choked out the whole sickening story. Chloe's expression morphed from confusion to absolute outrage. They can't do that, she exclaimed. That's theft. Did you call the police? The thought hadn't even occurred to me. Could I really report my own parents? Should I? Would the police even take it seriously, or would they just dismiss it as a family matter? I need to call my mom, I mumbled instead, dialing with shaking fingers. Susan answered, her voice its typical distracted drone. Charlotte, I'm busy preparing for tonight. Noah's friends are coming over to celebrate his acceptance. Mom, I cut in directly. Did you know Dad sold my car? A beat of silence. Then, it was necessary, honey. Noah's future depends on this. You know how prestigious Preston is. They only accepted 90 students from our state. But it was my car, I repeated, wondering why this simple, undeniable fact seemed impossible for them to grasp. Your father handled the paperwork, she said vaguely. He said it was all legal. How? The title was in my name. Another pause. He had a copy of your signature for emergencies. The implications slammed into me like a physical blow. My father had forged my signature to transfer ownership of my vehicle. That wasn't just unfair, it was criminal. This is wrong, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You know it is. Don't be selfish, Charlotte, she snapped, her voice hardening. After everything we've done for you, the food, the roof over my head that I pay rent for, I interjected. Family sacrifices for each other, she finished, using her familiar, hollow refrain, before hanging up. I sat there, stunned, in the break room, until Michelle, the shift manager, poked her head in. Break's been over for 10 minutes, Charlotte. Table 6 needs coffee refills. Mechanically, I stood, straightened my apron, and returned to the floor. For the next 4 hours, I moved through my shift like a ghost, taking orders, delivering food, collecting tips that would now go towards basic transportation rather than my education. Several regular customers noticed my red eyes, but I deflected their concerns with practiced server smiles. At 7:30, I punched out, collected my purse from my locker, and stood at the diner's entrance, staring out at the rain that had begun falling. On any other day, I would have hurried to my car, cranked the heater, and savored the brief sanctuary of my private space before driving home. Today, I pulled up my hood and stepped into the downpour, beginning the 1.8-mile walk to my parents' house. Each cold raindrop mixing with the tears I finally allowed myself to shed. By the time I reached our suburban 2-story home, my uniform was soaked through. My white dressing shoes squelched with every step, and my makeup had long since washed away. Through the dining room window, I could see them. My family, seated around our oak table, illuminated by the warm glow of the chandelier. Noah sat at the head of the table, my dad's usual place, wearing a Preston University sweatshirt that must have been purchased that very day. Mom was setting down a large chocolate cake, my favorite, except the blue icing read, "Congratulations, Noah." Extended family members and a few of Noah's friends filled the remaining chairs. A future Preston graduate banner hung proudly on the wall. I stood in the rain, observing the scene for several long minutes, feeling like an outsider looking in on a family that wasn't my own. No one had noticed my absence, or if they had, it hadn't interrupted their celebration. Today, my birthday, had been completely eclipsed. With a deep breath, I pushed open the front door. Conversation stalled, creating a stark silence as I stepped into the entryway, leaving a puddle on the hardwood floor. "Charlotte," Mom exclaimed, looking horrified at my appearance. "You're dripping all over the floor. Why didn't you call for a ride?" I stared at her, incredulous. "With what car, Mom?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the gathering. Noah's friends shifted awkwardly in their seats. "Where were you?" "Dad," David asked, as if I were late for Noah's celebration, rather than returning from a 12-hour workday on my own birthday. "Working, like I do every Tuesday, then walking home in the rain because someone sold my car." My voice remained eerily calm. Aunt Carol, seated near the kitchen doorway, looked between me and my father with growing confusion. "David, what is she talking about?" David cleared his throat, standing to take control of the situation. "This is hardly the time or place, Charlotte. We have guests. Go change and join the celebration. Noah has exciting news." "I know the news," I replied, not moving from my spot. "Preston University. First semester's tuition is $5,800. Due this week." From me. Noah finally looked up from his phone, his expression showing the first hint of confusion. "Wait, what? I thought the college fund was covering it, Dad." "It is," David replied quickly, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Your sister is just being dramatic. She's upset because we had to liquidate some assets." "You mean my car?" I challenged. "The car I bought with my own money? That asset." Uncle Michael set down his fork, the clink echoing in the strained silence. "David, did you sell Charlotte's car without her permission?" "It was a family decision," David stated firmly. "No," I countered, stepping further into the dining room, water dripping from my soaked clothes onto the beige carpet Mom was so proud of. "It wasn't. You didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me until after it was done." "I don't see what the big deal is," Noah interjected with a shrug, glancing back at his phone. "You can just buy another one. You're always working anyway." That casual dismissal of 3 years of relentless sacrifice ignited something fierce inside me. "The big deal is that it was mine," I declared, my voice rising. "Legally mine. Paid for with my money. Money I earned working 30-hour weeks while going to school full-time." "And Dad," I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Dad forged my signature to sell it." Gasps erupted from several family members. David's face, already red, deepened to a furious crimson. "That's a serious allegation," Uncle Michael said quietly. "It's the truth," I replied, looking directly at my father. Mom already confirmed it. All eyes swung to my mother, who suddenly became intensely interested in rearranging the cake plates. "It was an emergency situation," David insisted. "As Charlotte's parents, we have certain rights." "Not to my property," I interrupted, cutting him off. "I'm 25 years old, living under our roof," David countered, pushing back. "Eating our food. I pay rent." I shouted back. $400 a month to live in my childhood bedroom, plus groceries, plus utilities. Noah looked genuinely surprised by this information. Perhaps he had never questioned where the family money came from or went. "And now you expect me to pay nearly $6,000 for Noah's tuition? Money I've been saving to finish my own degree." David's expression hardened into one I recognized from childhood, the look that always preceded punishment. "Your brother has a future ahead of him. Preston will open doors. Your community college classes are just a hobby." The casual cruelty of that statement stunned the room into silence. Even Noah had the decency to look uncomfortable. "David," Aunt Carol said softly, "that's not fair." "Life isn't fair," David snapped back. "Family comes first. Charlotte needs to understand her responsibility to this family." I felt something break inside me. Not in a destructive way, but as if chains I hadn't fully recognized were finally snapping. "I've been responsible to this family since I was 16, I said quietly, the calm chilling even myself. "I've given you thousands of dollars. I've put my dreams on hold. I've worked jobs you would consider beneath you just to contribute to this household." David waved dismissively. "Everyone works. Everyone contributes. Does Noah?" I asked, looking at my brother. "Has he ever handed over his paychecks? Does he pay rent? Will he work through college like I do?" "That's different," Mom interjected, stepping in to defend him. Noah needs to focus on his studies. And I don't. The sheer, infuriating injustice of it all crystallized in that moment. You've been taking from me for years while giving everything to him. We've given you a home. David shouted, his patience finally shattering. Ungrateful after everything we've done. I'm not giving you the money, I stated firmly, surprising even myself with the resolve in my voice. Not happening. The dining room went completely silent. Noah's friends stared at their plates. Relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. David rose slowly from his chair, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Then pack your shit. You're dead to me. Mom gasped David. I mean it, he continued, pointing towards the stairs. If you're not willing to support this family, you're no longer part of it. Get your things and get out tonight. In previous confrontations, this would have been the moment. I would have backed down, apologized, agreed to his terms, surrendered my autonomy to maintain peace. The familiar, suffocating weight of guilt would have settled on my shoulders, and I would have convinced myself that family obligation trumped personal boundaries. Not tonight. Okay, I said simply. David blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Okay, what? Okay, I'll pack. I'll leave. I turned towards the stairs, then paused to address the shocked faces around the table. And Noah, congratulations on Preston. I hope it's worth it. As I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, I heard the confused murmurs erupt below. Mom's plaintive, David, do something. And Dad's dismissive, she'll calm down and apologize. They didn't know. The daughter who always gave in, who always sacrificed, who always prioritized family harmony over personal dignity. That person had finally reached her breaking point. In my bedroom, I pulled my largest suitcase from under the bed and began methodically emptying my dresser drawers. The full shock of my decision hadn't quite registered yet. Instead, I operated with a strange, almost eerie calm clarity. The sounds of the ongoing celebration drifted upstairs, awkward at first, then resuming as if my departure were merely a momentary disruption, not a family-shattering event. I heard Noah's laugh, followed by David's booming voice recounting some Preston University trivia he'd undoubtedly memorized for the occasion. That day, I packed efficiently, selecting clothes appropriate for job interviews and work, consciously leaving behind high school memorabilia and items too bulky to transport. When the first suitcase was full, I retrieved a duffel bag from my closet and continued. My essential documents would be crucial for establishing independence. I opened my desk drawer where I kept my social security card, passport, and birth certificate, only to find it conspicuously, terrifyingly empty. A cold realization washed over me. Dad had taken my documents, likely after selling my car, anticipating potential resistance. Without these papers, finding new housing or employment would be significantly more difficult. I took out my phone and texted Aunt Carol. Can you come upstairs? Need to talk privately. While waiting, I continued packing toiletries and electronics. My laptop, thankfully, had always stayed with me at work or school, safe from family redistribution. A soft knock at the door preceded Aunt Carol's concerned face. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her. Charlotte, what's happening? She asked, eyeing my half-packed suitcases. Dad sold my car without permission, forged my signature, and now wants me to pay for Noah's tuition with my savings, I summarized, each word tasting bitter. When I refused, he told me to leave. So, I'm leaving. Aunt Carol sat heavily on my bed. This isn't right, she murmured. Where will you go? I can stay with my friend Chloe temporarily, I replied, continuing to pack. But I need your help. Dad's taken my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, and I'm worried about what else he might have done. Her expression darkened. What do you mean? Uncle Michael mentioned something at Christmas about Dad's finances not adding up, I explained. And Dad's always insisted on helping with my paperwork, my taxes, even my student loan applications. Aunt Carol hesitated, then spoke. Quietly. I've had concerns for years. Your father has always been controlling with money, even as a child, but recently he's borrowed money from me 3 times, substantial amounts, with vague explanations about temporary shortfalls. This new information confirmed my growing suspicions. I need to check something, I said, moving toward the door. Can you keep packing for me? I'll be right back. Downstairs, the party continued in the dining room, oblivious. I slipped quietly into Dad's home office, a room we were generally forbidden to enter without explicit permission. The desk drawer where he kept financial documents was locked, but I knew from childhood snooping that he kept the key taped under the desk blotter. The key was exactly where I remembered. I opened the drawer and began quickly photographing documents with my phone. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan applications. What I found confirmed my worst fears. My name appeared on credit card statements for accounts I'd never opened. Loan documents bore my signature, or rather, a disturbingly reasonable facsimile, on dates when I had been working verifiable shifts at the diner. My social security number appeared on financial records for transactions I'd never authorized. Identity theft. By my own father. He'd been using my good credit to finance what appeared to be mounting gambling debts, according to bank withdrawals at ATMs located in or near casinos. I also found statements for Noah's college fund, an account that had been nearly depleted long before his acceptance to Preston. The truth was becoming horrifyingly clear. There was no money for Noah's tuition because Dad had spent it, and now he expected me to fill the gap. I quickly created digital copies of everything, emailing them to myself and to Aunt Carol for safekeeping. Then, making a crucial decision, I wrote a detailed letter explaining what I'd discovered, including photographs of the forged documents and unauthorized accounts. I made 3 copies, one to leave behind, one for Aunt Carol and one for Uncle Michael, whose accounting background would help navigate the financial fraud aspects. When I returned to my room, Aunt Carol had nearly finished packing my remaining clothes. I found something, I said, showing her the evidence on my phone. Dad's been using my identity to open credit accounts. There are loans in my name I never took out. Aunt Carol's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. I'm leaving copies of everything I found, I explained, handing her one of the packets. This explains why he was so desperate for me to pay Noah's tuition. There is no college fund. There probably hasn't been for years. You need to report this, Aunt Carol said firmly. This is criminal fraud, Charlotte, even if he is your father. I nodded, the weight of this monumental step not lost on me. I know. But first, I need to get out of here safely. Can you give this to Uncle Michael? I handed her the 3rd packet. And can you call me an Uber? I don't have access to my car anymore. While Aunt Carol ordered the ride, I texted Chloe, emergency. Need place to stay tonight. We'll explain everything. Her response was immediate, doors open. Wine's ready. I did a final sweep of my room, ensuring I had everything essential. My gaze lingered on the birthday cards on my dresser, none from my immediate family, all from coworkers and friends. I tucked them into my bag as tangible reminders that some people in my life valued me properly. The Uber app showed my ride was 5 minutes away. It was time to face my parents one last time. Downstairs, the party had moved to the living room. Noah was now excitedly opening congratulatory cards, exclaiming over the checks inside each one. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me, money freely given to Noah, while mine was taken without consent. I'm leaving now, I announced from the entryway, suitcases resting by my side. Mom looked up, genuine shock on her face, as if she hadn't truly believed I would follow through. Charlotte, don't be ridiculous. Where would you even go? That's not your concern anymore, I replied calmly. But before I go, you should know I've discovered what Dad's been doing with my identity and credit. David's face blanched visibly. Noah stopped opening cards, his smile vanishing. I don't know what you're talking about, David bluffed, but his eyes, darting nervously, betrayed him. The credit cards, the loans, all in my name, all without my knowledge, I continued, my voice steady. I've documented everything, including the forged signatures. David stood abruptly, his jaw tight. Now listen here. No, you listen, I interrupted, cutting him off before he could regain control. I've made copies of everything. I'm leaving one here. I placed the envelope pointedly on the entryway table. What happens next depends on how you handle this situation. Are you threatening me? David's voice rose dangerously. I'm giving you an opportunity to make things right, I corrected, starting with my car and my documents. Mom approached cautiously, her hand reaching out. Honey, please don't do this. Not on Noah's special day. The mention of Noah's celebration on my forgotten birthday was the final straw. I gently removed her hand. It's my special day too, Mom. I turned 25 today. But I guess that wasn't worth remembering. Aunt Carol appeared beside me, taking one of my bags. I'll walk you out, Charlotte. As we turned to leave, Mom called out, her voice brittle, if you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back. I paused at the threshold, turning to face her one last time. I never truly was welcomed here, Mom. I was tolerated as long as I was useful. David remained silent, his mind likely calculating the potential consequences of my discoveries. Noah looked utterly confused, his perfect world of privilege beginning to show cracks. Without another word, I walked out into the night, leaving behind the house that had never truly been a home, and the family that had never truly respected me as an individual. The Uber driver loaded my bags into the trunk as Aunt Carol hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Call me tomorrow. We'll figure this out together. As the car pulled away, I watched my childhood home recede in the rear window. The packet of evidence I'd left behind would be discovered by morning, and the consequences would begin to unfold. For the first time in years, despite the immense uncertainty ahead, I felt something close to freedom. Chloe's one-bedroom apartment welcomed me with the promised glass of wine and a pull-out couch already made up with fresh sheets. Her eyes widened as I recounted the evening's events, the evidence I'd discovered, and the ultimatum I'd delivered. Holy shit, she whispered when I finished. Your dad's been stealing your identity? That's like actual prison time fraud. I know, I replied, the full, crushing weight of the situation finally hitting me. The controlled calm that had carried me through the confrontation dissolved, and I broke down in tears. Years of manipulation, gaslighting, and exploitation poured out, hot and raw, as Chloe held me, her own righteous anger evident in her tense shoulders. You did the right thing, she repeated like a mantra. They left you no choice. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into a dreamless sleep on Chloe's pull-out couch, my phone silenced after a barrage of texts from my mother, alternating between guilt trips and desperate pleas to work things out privately. Morning arrived. With sunlight filtering through Chloe's thin curtains and the harsh reality of my new situation. I was essentially homeless, with limited savings, thankfully in an account Dad couldn't access, no transportation, and a full-blown family crisis unfolding. But for the first time in years, I felt clear-headed about my value and my boundaries. My phone showed 17 missed calls, 10 from Mom, 4 from Dad, 2 from Noah, and 1 from Aunt Carol. Numerous text notifications cluttered my screen, but I ignored them all for the moment, needing coffee before facing the fallout. Chloe had left for her morning shift, leaving a note with her spare key and instructions to make yourself at home. I showered, dressed in clean clothes, and finally steeled myself to check messages. Mom's texts escalated from, please call us immediately, to, how could you do this to your father, to, we raised you better than this. Dad's were terse demands to return home immediately to discuss this misunderstanding. Noah's single text read, WTF is happening? Dad's freaking out. Aunt Carol's message was different. Met with Michael this morning. He's reviewed everything. Call when you're ready. We're with you. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Are you safe? She asked without preamble. Yes, staying with a friend, I assured her. Have you heard from them this morning? Oh yes, she replied grimly. Your father's been calling everyone in the family with his version of events. Claims you're having some kind of breakdown, making wild accusations because you're jealous of Noah. Of course he is, I sighed. And Uncle Michael? What did he think of the documents? He's furious, Aunt Carol said. Says it's textbook identity theft and fraud. The forged signatures are especially damning. He's prepared to help you file reports if that's what you want. We arranged to meet at Uncle Michael's office at 11 o'clock. I spent the interim hours making lists of immediate needs, new copies of vital documents, credit monitoring services, secure housing, reliable transportation. The walk to Uncle Michael's downtown accounting firm took 25 minutes, giving me time to organize my thoughts. The crisp October air felt cleansing after years of the suffocating atmosphere at home. Uncle Michael welcomed me with an uncharacteristic hug before ushering me into his private office. Aunt Carol was already seated, along with a woman introduced as Brenda Miller, a lawyer friend of Uncle Michael's who specialized in identity theft cases. "I've reviewed the documentation you provided," Uncle Michael began without preamble. "It's extensive and concerning. Your father has opened 3 credit cards and 2 personal loans in your name, totaling just over $27,000 in debt." The figure staggered me. $27,000? How did he get away with this for so long? "He had access to your mail, your personal information, and enough knowledge of your schedule to intercept any communications from these financial institutions," Brenda explained. "And he likely counted on your family loyalty to prevent you from reporting him if you did discover the fraud. Which brings us to the difficult question," Uncle Michael said gently. "How do you want to proceed?" Brenda outlined my choices. "You could report the fraud to the police and credit bureaus, potentially resulting in criminal charges against your father. You could attempt to negotiate privately, having him transfer the debts to his name and return your property. Or you could accept the debts as your own to avoid family conflict." "That last option is absolutely not happening," I stated firmly. "These aren't my debts. I won't pay for his fraud." "Good," Aunt Carol nodded approvingly. "You shouldn't have to. I'd like to try the middle path first," I decided after a moment of consideration. "Give him one chance to make this right without legal consequences, but I want everything in writing, and I want it done immediately." "A reasonable approach," Brenda agreed. "I can draft a formal letter outlining the evidence we have and the terms for avoiding legal action." While Brenda worked on the letter, Uncle Michael helped me begin the process of securing my finances and identity. We froze my credit with all 3 major bureaus, established new accounts at a different bank, and compiled a list of all the fraudulent accounts that needed addressing. "There's something else you should know," Uncle Michael said hesitantly. "Your father has apparently been mishandling finances beyond just your identity. He borrowed $8,000 from me last year for Noah's college fund, money that clearly wasn't used for that purpose, and $12,000 from me in 3 separate loans." Aunt Carol added, always with urgent family reasons that couldn't be discussed in detail. A disturbing picture was emerging, coalescing into a single, ugly truth. "He has a gambling problem, doesn't he?" I asked, remembering the casino ATM withdrawals I'd seen in his financial records. Uncle Michael nodded grimly. "The evidence points that way. There are regular cash withdrawals at locations near Riverside Casino, and some of the credit card statements show cash advances with the same geolocation." This explains why he was so desperate for me to cover Noah's tuition, I realized. He's probably burned through any actual college savings. "Which makes his treatment of you even more reprehensible," Aunt Carol said, her voice laced with anger. "Using your good credit and hard work to cover for his addiction, then trying to force you to finance Noah's education when the money he'd set aside was long gone." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Your brother just showed up at the diner asking for you. He looks freaked out." What should I tell him? I hesitated, then replied, "If he's alone, you can give him your address. If Dad's with him, tell him I'm not working today." Chloe confirmed Noah was alone, and I informed Aunt Carol and Uncle Michael that we might have an additional participant in our discussion soon. While we waited, Brenda returned with the drafted letter. It outlined in clinical, undeniable terms the evidence of identity theft, the specific accounts fraudulently opened in my name, and the terms for avoiding legal action, immediate return of my car, or its cash equivalent at fair market value. Return of all my personal documents, closure and transfer of all fraudulent accounts to my father's name, and a formal acknowledgement of the wrongdoing. "This is excellent," I said after reading it. "Clear and non-negotiable." A knock at the office door interrupted us. Uncle Michael opened it to reveal Noah, looking disheveled and confused, still wearing his Preston University sweatshirt from the night before. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, then noticed the others in the room. "Aunt Carol, Uncle Michael, why is everyone acting weird? Dad's having some kind of meltdown and Mom won't stop crying." "Sit down, Noah," I said calmly. "There's a lot you don't know about our family finances." Over the next hour, we explained the situation to my brother, showing him the evidence of our father's fraud and gambling. His initial defensiveness, "Dad wouldn't do that," gradually gave way to shocked understanding as the documentation made the truth undeniable. "So, there's no college fund?" he finally asked in a small voice. "And he sold your car illegally to make the tuition deposit?" "That's the situation," Uncle Michael confirmed. "Your sister has been subsidizing the family for years while your father mismanaged and gambled away funds." Noah sat quietly, processing. I expected anger, denial, perhaps accusations that I was exaggerating. Instead, he looked up with genuine remorse. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "All these years I thought. I just assumed." "You assumed what you were told," I finished for him. "We all did. Dad's very convincing." Noah straightened suddenly. "We need to go home now. Dad was talking crazy this morning. Something about fixing this before it goes too far." I didn't understand then, but now I'm worried. Brenda handed me the formal letter. "If you're going to confront him, take this. And remember, you're negotiating from a position of strength. You have evidence of criminal activity." Aunt Carol insisted on driving us. On the way, Noah filled us in on the chaos that had erupted after I left. "Dad went ballistic when he read what you left behind," he explained. "Started shredding papers, deleting emails. Mom kept asking what was happening, and he just kept saying he'd handled things the only way he could. This morning, he was on the phone with some loan shark-sounding guy, promising payment by tonight." The picture became clearer, sickeningly so. Dad's gambling debts had likely extended far beyond legitimate financial institutions. My departure and the evidence I'd exposed had triggered full-blown panic. When we arrived at the house, the scene was eerily quiet. Mom answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed and weary. "He's in his office," she said without greeting. "He hasn't come out since Noah left." Noah and I exchanged concerned glances. Aunt Carol stepped forward. "Susan, we need to talk, all of us together. David has created a serious situation that affects the entire family." Mom's defensive posture crumbled slightly. "I don't understand what's happening," she admitted. "David won't explain anything properly. He just keeps saying Charlotte is trying to ruin our family." "That's not true," I said firmly. "I'm trying to protect myself from fraud he committed against me. There's a difference." We moved into the living room where I briefly outlined the situation for Mom, whose expression shifted from skepticism to horror as Noah and Aunt Carol confirmed the details. "I didn't know," she whispered repeatedly. "He handles all the finances. He always has." "That's part of the problem," Uncle Michael said gently. "Total financial control is a form of abuse, Susan." Dad's office door remained closed despite the voices in the living room. Finally, Noah knocked firmly. "Dad, we need to talk, all of us, about everything." Silence. Noah tried the handle. It was locked. A cold dread settled in my stomach. "Dad," I called. "We have a proposal for handling this situation." More silence. Mom found the spare key, her hands trembling as she handed it to Noah. He unlocked the door to reveal Dad hunched over his desk, frantically shredding documents. "It's too late," he said without looking up, his voice hollow. "You've ruined everything." A week passed in a whirlwind of legal consultations, financial damage control, and family reckonings. I stayed with Chloe, whose tiny apartment became my sanctuary as the situation with my family unfolded in increasingly dramatic fashion. The morning after our confrontation, Aunt Carol called with a vivid description of the scene at my parents' house. "Your aunt was crying in the kitchen when I arrived," she reported, her voice hushed. "Your uncle was in the driveway screaming into his phone about fiscal responsibility and family betrayal. And your father, this is the part you won't believe. Your father was literally on the front porch begging the neighbors for a loan to cover some urgent debt." The family's financial house of cards had collapsed spectacularly. With my departure and the exposed fraud, Dad could no longer maintain the precarious juggling act of debts, lies, and manipulations. His desperation had reached such a point that he'd abandoned all dignity, approaching neighbors with increasingly implausible stories about temporary financial emergencies. "What about Mom?" I asked in shock. She keeps saying she had no idea how bad things were, Aunt Carol replied. I believe her, actually. Your father kept her as financially ignorant as he could. The full extent of Dad's financial mismanagement became clearer as Uncle Michael delved deeper into the records I'd photographed. Beyond the identity theft involving my name, Dad had accumulated gambling debts to less than reputable lenders, taken cash advances on maxed-out credit cards to pay other credit cards, and systematically drained not only Noah's college fund, but also his and Mom's retirement accounts. It's a textbook case of financial addiction, Uncle Michael explained during one of our daily update calls. He created an unsustainable cycle that required increasingly desperate measures to maintain. The car situation resolved itself first. After receiving Brenda's formal letter outlining potential criminal charges, Dad provided contact information for the buyer. It was a poker buddy who'd purchased my Toyota well below market value, clearly knowing something was suspicious about the transaction. With Uncle Michael accompanying me as a witness, I confronted the buyer with undeniable evidence that the sale was fraudulent. Look, I don't want legal trouble, the man said, clearly uncomfortable. How about I return the car to you for what I paid? For $1,000 cash. The blue book value is $7,200, Uncle Michael countered firmly. After tense negotiation, we settled on the return of my car, plus $2,000 compensation for the inconvenience. Not the full value, but a significant improvement over the complete loss I'd faced a week earlier. My personal documents reappeared on Chloe's doorstep in a manila envelope 3 days after the confrontation, delivered by Noah without comment. My birth certificate, social security card, passport, and even my high school diploma were all included, extracted from wherever Dad had hidden them. The fraudulent accounts proved more complicated. Brenda helped me file formal identity theft reports with each creditor, providing the evidence of forged signatures. Most initially pushed back, requiring police reports before proceeding. This is where you need to decide how far you're willing to go, Brenda advised during a consultation in her downtown office. Filing police reports means your father could face criminal charges. Identity theft involving this amount of money could mean jail time. I struggled with this decision, the residual programming of family loyalty battling with the clear need for justice and financial protection. In the end, a development from Noah made the decision for me. My brother appeared at Chloe's apartment unannounced 5 days after the initial confrontation, looking pale and determined. Dad's been using my identity, too, he announced without preamble. I checked my credit report like Uncle Michael suggested. There are 2 credit cards I never opened. This revelation cemented my resolve. The exploitation hadn't been limited to me. Noah had simply been kept in the dark about his role in Dad's schemes, protected by his golden child status until the financial desperation grew too extreme. Together, we filed the necessary police reports. Detective Jessica Riley was assigned to our case. Her matter-of-fact approach was a profound relief after days of emotional family drama. Unfortunately, these cases are increasingly common, she explained as we provided statements. Family members are the most common perpetrators of identity theft because they have easy access to personal information and often believe family ties will prevent reporting. With police reports in hand, the credit card companies and lenders began the slow process of removing the fraudulent accounts from my credit history. The debt wouldn't disappear. Dad would still owe the money, but my name and credit score would finally be disentangled from his financial misconduct. A week after my departure, Noah called to report that Preston University had rescinded his acceptance. After the tuition deposit check bounced, his dream school was no longer an option. I'm actually relieved, he confessed, surprising me. I've been thinking about everything. How you worked while I got everything handed to me. How unfair it's all been. It wasn't your fault, I said, finding forgiveness easier than expected. You didn't create the system. No, but I benefited from it, he acknowledged. And I never questioned it. I'm going to enroll at the community college for now, get a job, maybe transfer to state next year if I can earn a scholarship. His newfound maturity in facing this setback suggested he might grow from this family crisis in unexpectedly positive ways. Mom's reaction evolved throughout the week. Initial texts blaming me for destroying our family gave way to confused questions about financial matters she'd never been allowed to understand. By day 5, she called with a different tone entirely. "I've made an appointment with a financial advisor," she said hesitantly. "And I've applied for a part-time job at the library. I need to learn to stand on my own." "That's great, Mom," I replied, genuinely proud of this unexpected step toward independence. "Your father isn't handling things well," she continued. "He's angry. Blames everyone but himself. Says if the family had just supported him a little longer, he could have fixed everything. The classic justification of the addict. Just one more chance. One more cover-up. One more enabling act from family members." I recognized the manipulation tactic for what it was. There was nothing to fix, Mom. The system was broken from the start. He was taking and taking without plan or permission. "I see that," she admitted quietly. "I should have questioned things sooner." Dad's response to the unfolding consequences came 7 days after my departure. As the police investigation proceeded and creditors began contacting him directly about the fraudulent accounts, his desperate attempts to regain control became increasingly transparent. First came angry texts accusing me of betrayal and ingratitude. When these received no response, he shifted to appeals for family unity and vague promises to make everything right if I'd just call off the investigation. When these two were ignored, he appeared at Chloe's apartment building, demanding to speak with me. Chloe, bless her, refused him entry, and he eventually left after threatening to tell everyone what you've done. The ultimate attempt at reconciliation came in the form of a rambling email sent to me, Noah, Mom, Aunt Carol, and Uncle Michael simultaneously. "I've only ever tried to provide for this family," it began. "Everything I did was for all of you. The gambling was just to try to solve temporary cash flow problems. If everyone had just trusted me a little longer, I could have fixed everything. Now you've destroyed our family over money. Is that really worth it? Charlotte, I'm your father. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me? By turning your brother against me? By embarrassing me in front of the neighbors? By involving the police in private family matters? I'm begging you to reconsider this path. We can work this out privately. Family should come first." The manipulation was so transparent now that I could only feel sad at how predictable it was. The man who had controlled our family through financial abuse and emotional manipulation for decades couldn't understand why his tactics were no longer working. I didn't reply. Neither did Noah or Uncle Michael. Mom sent a brief response. "I've consulted with my own lawyer. Please direct future communications through her office." By the end of that first week, I had secured my own apartment with Aunt Carol as guarantor, since my credit history was still in recovery. The studio was small, but it was entirely mine, the first living space I'd ever had without parental oversight or obligation. My first paycheck after the confrontation went into my new, secure bank account. Every dollar mine to allocate as I saw fit. The freedom was dizzying after years of surrendering significant portions of my income to family obligations. Chloe helped me move in, arranging my meager possessions in the compact space. "It's not much," I apologized, looking around at the sparse furnishings, a second-hand bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and boards. "It's everything," she corrected me with a smile. "It's yours on your terms." And she was right. The studio wasn't just a physical space, it was a declaration of independence, a tangible manifestation of my reclaimed autonomy. That evening, sitting alone in my new apartment, I recognized the complex emotions swirling within me, relief at escaping the exploitative dynamics, guilt that still surfaced despite my best efforts, anger at the years of manipulation, grief for the supportive family I'd never truly had, and an unexpected sense of pride in finally establishing boundaries. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but for the first time in my adult life, I was the one determining the direction. 6 months after walking away from my parents' house in the rain, my life had transformed in ways both practical and profound. The studio apartment I'd initially rented had become a true home, small but arranged exactly as I wanted, decorated with second-hand treasures that reflected my actual tastes rather than family expectations. My career trajectory had shifted significantly after Aunt Carol recommended me for an administrative position at her friend's legal office. The steady hours and professional environment were a welcome change from the physically demanding diner work, though I still picked up occasional weekend shifts at Mabel's to accelerate my savings. The law firm's educational assistance program even offered partial tuition reimbursement, allowing me to resume my business classes with less financial strain. "You're a natural at client relations," my supervisor commented during my 3-month review. "Have you considered paralegal certification?" The firm would support that career path. For the first time, I could envision a professional future based on my skills and interests rather than immediate financial survival. The breathing room created by fair compensation and reasonable working conditions allowed me to think beyond the next rent payment or car repair. That car, my reclaimed Toyota, had been replaced with a slightly newer Honda purchased entirely in my name with a legitimate auto loan that was building my restored credit. The transaction had been straightforward and transparent, a refreshing contrast to the tangled financial manipulations of my family. My relationship with my immediate family had evolved into carefully structured interactions. Dad faced legal consequences for the identity theft, ultimately accepting a plea deal that included probation, mandatory financial counseling, and restitution payments. The criminal record had cost him his sales management position, a consequence he still blamed me for rather than his own actions. I maintained no direct contact with him, a boundary that occasionally triggered guilt but increasingly felt like necessary protection. Mom had reached out repeatedly, her messages evolving from guilt-inducing pleas to more respectful communication as she established her own independence. Our first in-person meeting after the confrontation occurred 3 months later at a neutral coffee shop. She arrived looking both older and somehow more present, the passive enabler role visibly falling away as she navigated life with newfound agency. "I filed for legal separation," she announced without preamble. "The financial counselor helped me see how unhealthy our relationship has been." "That's a big step," I acknowledged, surprised but supportive. "How are you managing practically?" "I'm working 30 hours a week at the library now," she said with a hint of pride. "And I've moved into a small apartment near work. Your father is still in the house, trying to sell it to pay debts." We established a tentative new relationship, not the automatic closeness assumed by family ties, but a growing mutual respect between adults who shared history but now chose their level of involvement. Our weekly phone calls were brief, but increasingly genuine, no longer shadowed by unspoken expectations of sacrifice or obligation. Noah's transformation had been perhaps the most surprising development. The entitled teenager had been replaced by a surprisingly grounded young adult, navigating significant disappointment with unexpected resilience. "Community college isn't what I expected," he admitted during one of our monthly lunch meetings. "But Professor Wilson's business ethics class is actually incredible. I'm thinking about majoring in accounting now, maybe with a focus on fraud prevention." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. His first-hand experience with our father's financial misconduct had sparked an interest in preventing similar situations for others. Noah had secured a part-time job at a local bookstore, paying his own expenses for the first time and learning financial management from Uncle Michael. Our sibling relationship, previously defined by the unequal family system that privileged him, evolved into something more balanced and genuine. "I still can't believe how blind I was," he said during a rare, vulnerable moment. "All those years you were working while I just took and took." "You were a kid following the family script," I reminded him. We all were. Therapy had become an essential part of my healing journey, helping me recognize and challenge the deeply ingrained patterns of guilt, obligation, and self-sacrifice that had allowed the exploitation to continue for so long. "Family systems like yours create powerful conditioning," Dr. Eleanor Vance explained during one session. "The expectation that you should set yourself on fire to keep others warm doesn't disappear overnight." Slowly, I learned to recognize the difference between healthy generosity and harmful self-neglect. The voice that automatically responded yes to every request, regardless of personal cost, grew quieter, replaced by thoughtful consideration of my own needs and boundaries. Uncle Michael continued providing financial guidance as I rebuilt my credit and established healthy money management habits. His matter-of-fact approach to financial education filled gaps deliberately created by my father's controlling behavior. Financial literacy is a form of self-defense, he explained while helping me create my first actual budget, especially for women who are often discouraged from fully understanding money. Aunt Carol remained my most consistent support, having recognized the unhealthy family dynamics long before I had the language or perspective to identify them. Her weekly dinner invitations provided not just meals, but a modeling of what healthy family relationships could look like. "I always saw myself in you," she confided one evening. "The responsible one, the giver. I spent decades trying to earn your father's approval before I realized it was a game designed for me to lose." As my birthday approached again, the 26th, marking 1 year since that shattering confrontation, I found myself reflecting on the painful but necessary journey of the past 12 months. The celebration I planned bore no resemblance to previous years' forgotten or hijacked occasions. I reserved a private room at my favorite restaurant and invited the people who had truly supported my transformation: Chloe, Aunt Carol, Uncle Michael, my therapist Dr. Eleanor Vance, coworkers from both jobs, and even Noah and Mom, with clear communication that this invitation didn't extend to Dad. Surrounded by people who respected my boundaries and celebrated my growth, I recognized how fundamentally my understanding of family had shifted. The automatic obligation based on genetic connection had been replaced by chosen connections based on mutual respect and genuine care. "I'd like to make a toast," Aunt Carol said, raising her glass. To Charlotte, who had the courage to walk away from what was hurting her and toward what could heal her. The applause and genuine affection in the room represented a form of wealth I hadn't previously recognized: relationships based on choice rather than obligation, on mutual support rather than one-sided sacrifice. Later that evening, returning to my apartment alone but not lonely, I reflected on the painful lessons of the past year. The journey from exploitation to autonomy had required facing difficult truths: that those who claimed to love me had systematically taken advantage of my sense of duty, that family first had been weaponized to extract compliance, that genuine love doesn't demand constant self-sacrifice. The hardest lesson had been learning that forgiveness didn't necessarily mean reconciliation. I could release the anger and resentment toward my father without inviting further harm into my life. I could acknowledge the complex reality that he had both genuinely loved his children and exploited them to serve his addiction and control needs. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments of grief for the supportive family I'd never truly had. Still occasional pangs of program guilt when I prioritized my needs. But these reactions no longer controlled my decisions or defined my worth. As I prepared for bed, my phone displayed a text from an unknown number. "Happy birthday, Charlotte. I hope someday you'll understand everything I did was for this family. Dad." 6 months earlier, this message would have triggered hours of agonizing defensiveness or attempts to explain my perspective. Tonight, I simply acknowledged the contact without responding, recognizing it as an attempt to reestablish the old dynamics rather than create healthy new ones. True healing wasn't about convincing those who had hurt me to recognize their actions. It was about creating a life where their recognition wasn't necessary for my peace. The boundaries I'd established weren't walls built from resentment, but rather healthy perimeters protecting the new life I was building. A life based on mutual respect, clear communication, and the radical notion that my worth wasn't measured by how much I sacrificed for others. The next morning, I woke to sunshine streaming through curtains I had chosen in an apartment I had earned, surrounded by possessions that were securely mine. The day ahead included work I found meaningful, classes advancing my chosen career path, and connections with people who valued me as a complete person rather than a resource to be exploited. This, I realized, was the true definition of wealth. Not financial abundance, but the freedom to build a life aligned with my authentic values. The painful journey from exploitation to autonomy had ultimately led to something precious: the space to discover who I truly was beyond the family-assigned role of perpetual provider. As I moved forward, I carried this understanding like a compass: That family should be the people who help you become more fully yourself, not those who demand you diminish yourself to serve their needs. And sometimes the most profound act of self-love is simply walking away from those who cannot see your worth beyond what you can give them. This journey taught me that true strength isn't about enduring abuse, but about building a life where your peace comes first. What about you? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family, even when it felt impossible? Share your stories or your thoughts below. I'm always reading what you have to say.